So here's what's going on here, right? So in the craziness of all of this, where we're all doing this thing and coming out about it, the Libertarian Party of Kentucky tweeted out a thing, and they said, why don't we just, mark people with yellow stars sewn into their clothes? So, like that's okay, because if we're going to set up this national caste system, which is what we're talking about here, right? Very different. We're going to say there's one group of people who are allowed to travel, go to work, go to events, and there's one group of people who aren't. And the group of people who aren't are the ones who won't take the government fucking needle in their in their arm. So that was their comparison. Now this unleashed a huge firestorm, and I think that's great. I just think that's amazing that we're able to do that and reach a whole lot of people. Libertarians were trending. This is a big moment, and for the right reasons. Trending because we're opposing this now. Like, I wish we had been able to do this when the lockdowns first started. I think that would have been an incredible thing to do. Maybe we would have had some impact and actually preserved some liberty over this last year. So I just thought, to me, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly it. This is the power of messaging. This is what we can do. And the other thing that I said on the live stream last night is it convinced me more than I've ever been in the past, and I've been pretty convinced that, man, if the Mises Caucus and like the good, strong libertarians could just take control of the messaging of this party, we could change the world. I mean, there's like no limit to what we could do. It is so powerful to just have a few, like even just a few Twitter accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers, all directing one message. I mean, you can really, you can shove this right in people's face and make them actually, look at what you're talking about. Well, look at what this COVID passport really is. This is a fundamental change in our society, adopting the Chinese social credit system, which, by the way, I don't think this is like hyperbolic. The Chinese government has already implemented a COVID passport. This is right out of their playbook. So, this gets a ton of traction to the point that, right, like Seth Rogen and people are are getting outraged. Now, first off, the outrage is just so ridiculous. I'm sorry. This podcast, we're a couple of Jews on this podcast. We can talk about this. The idea that it's outrageous to use a Nazi comparison, that's what they're trying to go with here.
I always thought never forget. So these people are drumming up PR for the Holocaust. They're reminding people that there was a terrible thing.
Well, it does. It reminds me of the Gina Carano thing, where they're almost treating it like the response is almost as if they said something in favor of the Nazis.
Like, we need to reopen Auschwitz.
Yeah, or as if it was like that they were coming out and saying, oh yeah, we should really do what the Nazis did, or what the Nazis did wasn't so bad, or that's almost how they're treating it. But of course, that's not at all what happened. It's the opposite. They were saying, hey, we don't want to be like the Nazis. Okay? Now, it's also quite rich. I don't know if you saw, I had this exchange with that Charlotte Clymer woman, some blue check mark with a few 100,000 Twitter followers. And she was just like outraged. Oh, no one will take you seriously when you compare things to the Nazis. You should think about what the Jews really went through. She's lecturing me. I should think about that. And then people just start sending me all types of tweets from her. Oh, Trump's a Nazi. Trump's supporters are the brown shirts. The immigration detention centers are Nazi concentration camps. All this shit. So, of course, she's done it a ton. But I thought that was a really useful little moment to pay attention. Notice what's going on. This was my challenge to other libertarians. Peep game. See what they're doing here. This woman is not actually offended that somebody invoked a comparison to Nazi Germany. She's fine with it. And guess what? Neither is Seth Rogen. Okay? Seth Rogen exists in Hollywood. Has he been calling out all of the Nazi comparisons from Trump, about Trump over the last 4 years? Has he been? Okay. Look, if he is, and he's got a long history of saying, like, every time someone compares them to the Nazis, I'm against that because that belittles what actually happened in Nazi Germany, then okay, I'd give him a pass. But I don't think he is. It's just just know what's going on here. They use this as a technique. They claim a monopoly on who can make Nazi comparisons. And that is some bullshit right there. Okay? So that's what's going on. It's not that people are actually outraged about it. It's just that, oh, this is politically expedient to be outraged about it this time when you don't agree with the politics. But, oh, if we could compare Trump, I mean, for all these people, look, I understand it's not the Nazis, but if you want to go down this like line of thinking, the president of the United States said a few days ago that voter ID or what they're doing in Georgia was worse than Jim Crow. Right? What did he say? He said it makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle or something like that, right? Who the hell knows what he meant, but I think what normal people think that senile old man meant was that it's worse than Jim Crow. Now, okay, that's pretty fucking retarded to say, but if all these people aren't flipping out about that, why is it this? Why is it a little state chapter of the Libertarian Party says something and all of a sudden this is supposed to be so evil or over the top? Now, the worst you could say about it was like, it's just, you could argue that it's a little bit lazy to use the Nazi reference or comparison. Although technically they didn't even really use it. They were just kind of like, oh, should we do this? Like kind of being like, oh, should we really just blatantly go the Nazi route? You could argue that. I prefer to compare it to the Chinese social credit system. I just think it's a little bit more of an accurate comparison. But give me a fucking break with all this outrage. And you know what? The counter to that argument is that this shit helped get it trending a lot more than it would have if they compared it to the Chinese social credit system. So you could make the argument that all comparisons to the Holocaust are wrong. All comparisons, and of course, they also weren't comparing it to the Holocaust. They were comparing it to Nazi steps that led up to the Holocaust. But you could make the argument that all of the comparisons are wrong. But you know what? From my perspective, if you're going to do it, this was about as good a time to do it as any.